Who was your saddest celebrity encounter? A few years back, Robin Williams was having breakfast at my cafe, and was sitting next to a little girl who clearly recognized his voice but had no idea who he was and was too shy to make eye contact with a stranger. So Robin pulled his sleeve down over his hand to make a puppet and talked to her with a silly voice through it. The only sad part is thinking back on how sweet that was. Went and saw Steve-O do his stand-up tour. After his show, he said he would meet everybody there. We waited in line, and he was being super nice, laughing and taking pictures with everyone. Right before we got to the stage, some fat, redneck asshole told him that he was funnier back when he was on drugs. It killed his whole vibe. When we got to him, he just took a picture with us and said thanks for coming, but he was clearly in a bad mood. I don't blame him at all, he was still extremely nice, but he was clearly irritated. It was cool that he still met us and took a picture with us though. Seemed like a really cool dude. I was drunk at a friend's bachelor party in Vegas in '95. We are walking through the casino, and I see this glorious man with what can only be described as the aura of a movie star around him. I immediately recognize him as Sammy Davis Jr. I run up and say, "Sammy, can I get an autograph?" And he just turns around like he didn't hear me and starts walking. Thinking he couldn't hear me, I kind of yell, "Sammy Davis Jr." He turns around, looks right at me, and says, "You're a real asshole." I was pretty oblivious and had no idea why Sammy Davis Jr. was treating me like I had slapped his little sister's ass. For a few years after that, every time his name came up, I told people how big of a jerk Sammy Davis Jr. was. Fast forward to a few years later and I'm watching the movie Renaissance Man with Danny DeVito and I'm like, wait, I didn't know Sammy Davis Jr. was in this movie. Which caused me to IMDb it. And it all finally clicked. I had called Gregory Hines Sammy Davis Jr. to his face 5 years after Sammy died. It was probably the most delayed embarrassment I've ever felt in my life. I met George R.R. Martin at the Blaze Pizza in Evanston a couple of months back when he was in town to accept an award from Northwestern University. At the time, I was listening to the audiobook of A Clash of Kings, and he very excitedly told me, "You've got a ways to go to catch up." When I told him that I've already read what he's published 3 times, and I'm listening to the audiobook as a new way to experience the story, he just kind of deflated. He let out a big sigh, and just said, "Yeah, I need to finish the next book. People won't stop bothering me about it." I went to school with someone who wasn't a celebrity at the time who had celebrity parents. She had your typical teenage celebrity crush on an actor. Her mom started dating him and she got upset and shaved her head. Betty White. It was right after the Golden Girls and Golden Palace had ended. Her career was not in the best place at the time. I was at the Beverly Center in Los Angeles and saw a poster promoting Betty White signing her latest book about how much she loves animals. I liked the Golden Girls, so I thought I would swing by the bookstore to take a gander at Betty White. It was so sad. I'll always remember she was sitting alone at a big table with a stack of books in front of her. People were in the bookstore shopping, but no one was buying her book or really acknowledging her. She just sat there, pen in hand, waiting. She would occasionally wipe off some imaginary dust to look busy. I'm getting the chills just remembering it. Of course, I was such a self-involved college kid that I just stared at her from far away. I should have just gone up and talked to her. DMX very graciously held a door open for me recently. It was a nice encounter until I saw in the news the next day that he had been found unconscious in the parking lot later that evening. My saddest celebrity encounter was also my greatest. When I was in college, I was an extra in a few scenes of We Were Soldiers, a Vietnam movie with Mel Gibson and Sam Elliott. While I was waiting for a bus to take me back to wardrobe, one of the casting guys came up and picked me out of the crowd and asked me if I wanted to be in another scene with Sam Elliott. Of course I was ecstatic. I sat in this van waiting for Sam to come out, and it was going to drive us to the scene. Finally he comes out looking all pissed off and sits in the front seat. Against my better judgment I said something to the effect of, "Mr. Elliott, I'm a huge fan of yours and it's an honor to be in a scene with you." He snaps back, "Shut the fuck up, kid." Needless to say, when Sam Elliott tells you to STFU, you do it. So that's the sad part. though getting cussed out by a guy who typically plays the badass in movies was cool in some way. We filmed the scene, which is a short scene where he walks by Chris Klein and cusses at him about something. We film it over and over and I'm just some soldier walking by in the background. Occasionally between takes Sam would look over at me and scowl. After it's done we get back in the van to head back and Sam is again in the van. He turns around and says, "Sorry about earlier, kid, I just didn't want to fuck up my mood for the scene." I appreciate the compliment. Suddenly it dawned on me that when he cussed at me he was trying to stay in character for the upcoming scene. Pretty cool experience. Met Vince Vaughn in a bar in Hollywood. He was with his entourage or whatever, and had quite a few drinks. He hit on a girl friend of mine, and I was amazed to see her totally blow him off. Not that she should have gone for it, but it was pretty incredible to see a multimillionaire movie star get rejected by an accountant. Well, I once wanted to get Daryl Hannah's autograph for my friend who had been crushing on her since forever. I couldn't summon up my courage to approach her directly, so I just asked the dude sitting next to her. He put me off very politely. I went back to my friends empty-handed and was complimentary of Mr. Nobody's manners. They told me I just asked JFK Jr. for Daryl's autograph. My brother met Gene Simmons backstage at a show he was playing in. Gene complimented my brother highly on his guitar playing but then said, "Too bad you'll never make it," and just walked away. Gene Simmons is a douchebag. My dad ran into him in some bar in Baltimore in the very late 70s after a show. My dad wasn't a huge Kiss fan but appreciated their music and told Gene something along the lines of "Awesome concert, thanks for the show." Gene looked at my dad and then promptly replied, "I hope the next time you're sucking ass to impress someone, you pucker more," and then walked off. My dad was pissed and went to tell his two friends he was with it was time to go, and the bartender stopped them on the way out. Gene and his entourage told the bartender my dad was paying for their drinks and left already. Cost my dad almost $100 for their alcohol. They ditched him with paying. So growing up, every time something with Kiss came on, my dad would relate the story and rant about how Gene Simmons can suck and go die somewhere. I was tired of hearing about it, by the time I was 14 or 15. Met Samuel L. Jackson at a celebrity golf pro-am. Shook his hand after I found his ball in the rough and asked him to sign my wallet, the one that says "Bad Motherfucker" I bought off eBay since I love Pulp Fiction so much. Had the marker and all. He just said no chance. That feeling of disappointment will be forever with me. I saw Nicolas Cage at a restaurant when I was 7. I tried to take a picture of him discreetly and the flash went off. He and his posse immediately got up and left. I became interested in evolution and physical anthropology in high school after exploring the topic in books and discovered Richard Dawkins. I was in the process of reading another of his recent books when I found out he was doing a signing in the city. So I went to his talk and waiting in line to get an autograph. All through the Q&A session, people had great complex questions for him about his theories and ideas on evolution or certain species. I thought I would be clever and ask a simple and fun question. So in the cover of the book, I wrote, "What is your favorite animal?" I expected this to be refreshing when he went to sign my book. I got to the front and as he opened my book to sign it, he was a little thrown off. He gave me a look like I was mentally impaired and just signed his name. I was crushed and felt really embarrassed that my recent idol thought I was stupid. I wandered off through the racks of books and found a small group of 5 people huddled around one man speaking. I was curious and still trying to forget my last encounter, so I listened to this energetic man speak about the universe to this impromptu gathering. He was very knowledgeable and interactive. When I got a chance I asked him the same question, "What's your favorite animal?" He was very happy with the question and went on a long explanation of why the wolf was his favorite and when he first encountered one in Yellowstone. I learned later that man was Neil deGrasse Tyson. What a day! As a kid I saw Michael Jordan on a golf range in Hawaii. My uncle and I were hitting in the space right next to him, so he was literally 5 feet away. I was going to say something but all these other people started walking up to him and he just put his hand up as if to say not now. So I never bothered him. We did see Charles Barkley later and he had a whole crowd of people around him and he said Michael's pissed today because I kicked his ass on the golf course. At least that's what he said. My mom found Paris Hilton incognito in an airport, came to find me, brought me to a tiny lady in a hoodie and big sunglasses in the middle of the airport, goes "Hi, are you Paris Hilton?" Then pushed me in front of her and said, "Here, say hi to my son." Like I was a weird birthday gift or something. She said sup. I said sup, then she did this weird little laugh. Then my mom goes okay bye. A buddy of mine was a student at the University of Michigan while Michael Phelps was training there under Bob Bowman. He and a few friends were walking outside the natatorium and ran into Phelps, who was eating a granola bar while heading into practice. They were pretty awestruck, and headed over in hopes of a photo or potential blumpkin. Phelps quickly finished his granola bar in order to shake my buddy's hand. As they were shaking hands, he transferred the wrapper to my buddy, leaned in, whispered "You can keep that," and promptly walked off. I got denied entry to a club once because of Evan Rachel Wood. I was outside making a phone call and she came up to me all sketched out and asked me for a light about 30 times in 5 seconds. I turned and said "Get away from me, you fucking speed freak," and went back to my call. When I went to the door, the bouncer told me I wouldn't be allowed in that evening because she told him not to let me in. On the flip side of that, I then went towards Times Square in order to get back to NJ and saw Paul Mooney. I screamed out "Paul Mooney," and he turned and said "What do you want from me, you white motherfucker?" and laughed and conversed with me for a few minutes. I got cock-blocked by Brad Pitt. I was an extra in World War Z and I met this girl there and we were talking and all was great until one time Brad Pitt walks by. Was very friendly to her. Totally blanked me. His stunt double was a cool dude though. I met Hulk Hogan when I was 4, laddish 80s, at some wrestling thing in Dallas. All I remember is that my dad got his attention as he was walking toward the ring, and when he came around he stuck out this giant hand and said "Put it there, darlin'." I recognized him but he was scary, so I peed my pants and cried. I guess it's obvious now that he wanted a handshake or a high five or something? No idea. Anyway, scared the piss out of me. Dude is huge. I work for an airline, so I see some celebs from time to time. One time Tom Cruise cussed me out because I wouldn't violate federal law and bring his checked bags to him plain side. Made him go to baggage claim like everyone else.